Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of the Amazing Podcast. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Amazing, and we're bringing you the best, the latest, the greatest from the space of Kubernetes and cloud native. And if you like this conversation, you'll definitely love what you see. Just like this, there's a lot more happening on our website, amazic.com. That's amazic.com. So definitely head over there when you get a chance. And I have with me today the guest who is from a company that I've been hearing about a lot over the years, but never got a chance to interact with them. So I'm really excited to speak to someone from Giant Swarm today. And I have with me the CEO and the co-founder of Giant Swarm, Henning Lange. Henning, it's great to have you with us. Thanks for joining. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks, Twain. And thanks for having me today. Really pleasure talking to you today.
Yeah. So, Giant Swarm, it's been around for 9 years, and in the cloud native space, that is ancient. So much happens in a decade. So, it's been a while. If you could tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and the Giant Swarm story, I'd love to hear that.
Sure, and thanks. Yeah, I know I feel quite old, but let's see. So yeah, I'm Henning, one of the co-founders here at Giant Swarm, and my background is that I'm a tech entrepreneur for roughly 20 years. So before starting Giant Swarm, we run a different venture called AdCloud, and the real time data advertising space, and that was more or less back in 2008 2009 when we started the company, and very dynamic ecosystem obviously in the ad tech world. And so we built up basically kind of a platform to trade advertising in real time based on some data sets. And we were like very classical development, built kind of a very first ad server on AWS back then, and had to figure out that with our monolithic application, we were not moving fast enough. We were in a very competitive space with Google and the likes. So speed really mattered to us. And back then, there was a time when we started decoupling our applications into kind of a microservice architecture. And then we've tried everything from very early paths, like Heroku's and the likes. And that was standing quite fast in our ways. So we ended up building our own microservices infrastructure on AWS. And and then we figured out that we got much faster, but that this endeavor was really distracting our team. So we figured out that nearly a third of the time of our DevOps teams were going into building and maintaining this infrastructure, and that was not the core of our former venture, obviously. So like 2-3 years around, we sold AdCloud, and we figured out what's next. And for us, there was this very famous statement from Andreessen Horowitz, which was software is eating the world.
Eating the world.
And we figured out, okay, most companies might go down the same route what we did at AdCloud, becoming a software company, moving towards cloud, distributed system, microservice architecture, etc. And we thought we had kind of an unfair advantage because we have been on that journey very, very early on. What we were looking for was kind of having a fully managed solution for us so that our developers could really focus on what added value to our former business. And that's how we started Giant Swarm back in 2014. The founding theme was basically that every team with less than 100 developers or not considering as a core competence should not build up their own kind of platform to run software on top. And that's how we started in the very early days, focusing on developers because we thought that until the big giant enterprises would come around the corner and say, okay, we want to go there, that might take a couple of years. And so we ended up starting having kind of co-located data centers here in Germany and in the US, focusing on developers, allowing them to run their Dockerized or containerized microservices without taking care of the underlying infrastructure. And that's basically how we got started. And then, yeah, over the 9 years, we learned a lot. So Kubernetes was coming around the corner while we were writing our own service orchestration in the very early days. The Google guys called, I think, 2015, and said, "What are you doing there?" And then we figured out we do pretty similar stuff. And then obviously when Google open source Kubernetes, that was good for us as well. And more or less at the same time, also bigger enterprises approached us. That was end of 2015. And that's when we changed our approach. So much earlier than what we expected, focusing on enterprises, adopting Kubernetes, managing Kubernetes within the environment. So being it in the on-premise data center or the public cloud accounts of our customers. And then it became an interesting journey over the last 9 years.
Yeah, quite a story. Amazing. A lot of pivots along the way that you had to make as an organization. But I think, any organization that still stays relevant after a long time, they've gone through a bunch of reincarnations, I guess. And so, congrats to you for just sticking around and staying relevant and staying cool, even today, after all these years. I wanted to dig in and ask a bit more about your setup back in 2014. What was the solution back then? Because that was a time when Docker containers was just coming on the scene and everyone was just starting to talk about Docker, not even start implementing it yet. I guess 2015 was the year of Docker, and then 2016 was like Kubernetes. So what was Giant Swarm's start like? What was the solution? What did it look like back then?
Yeah, so basically the solution was that I said we had our own racks and data center and brought developers on one of the bigger clusters. And we ended up in a real problem. We partnered up with CoreOS back then, which was later acquired by Red Hat, and they had an open source project called Fleet, which we tried to use and became maintainer later on to allow to run hundreds of developers and projects on one single clusters, which became very painful. So also the learning from that was that it makes sense to have multiple environments, and that influenced obviously our architecture. So that's where we became kind of the very first to use Kubernetes to run a fleet of Kubernetes cluster on top, which we called Kubeception. I think there was a very early blog post back from 2015, 2016, maybe around that. So that was one of the key learnings. What I think it's like still, the goal has never changed. So since the inception of the company, the goal was to empower developers wherever they are, wherever they work, not wasting time and reducing their cognitive overload, taking care of infrastructure and empowering them. What has changed, obviously, is underlying technologies, and that's continuously going on. But the ultimate goal is still the same.
Very interesting. And so what was the time like when Kubernetes came on the scene around 2015, 16? How was it making that decision to pivot from what you had, your own racks, your own data center? And then what was involved in that whole transition to becoming a Kubernetes company? I don't know if that was back then in 2015, 16, or was it later? If you could shed some light on that.
If I remember correct, it was first half year of 2016 when we took a deeper dive into Kubernetes. Back then, there was also a few other projects. Some might remember Docker Swarm or DCOS from Mesosphere. It was a very small ecosystem back then. So we met everyone in San Francisco. We discussed, we looked deep into it, we did trials, we set up everything. But we figured out quite fast that Kubernetes was how we also envisioned the future going forward. It was very similar to what we have building ourselves. And so within a couple of weeks, we decided, okay, Kubernetes is our future. Today, it sounds like totally logical. Back then, it was not. Obviously, it was backed by Google. That was another advantage, most likely. Google had lots of experience with Borg. And we envisioned the same. That's how we took the decision. I'd say like sometime 2017, 2018, we saw, okay, Kubernetes is really set, and that's the future going forward. I mean, like the Google guys think about that's the next 20 years, most likely will stay around. To look further, it's like really hard. Technology might change again, but right now, I think the market has adopted it. It has become a clear standard, so that was a good decision. Looking back,
Yeah, wow, really interesting hearing about that, because I remember the times when there was a lot of comparisons, Swarm versus Kubernetes, and the various orchestration platforms, and do you need an orchestration platform at all? But yeah, really cool to hear that story. And I wanted to ask about, being a vendor building on top of Kubernetes, and from the very early days itself. Now it's matured a lot. It's 7-8 years or so of it being around. What are some of the things that you've seen as a vendor building on top of Kubernetes? Some of the big changes you've seen in the space, in Kubernetes as a platform and in the space, and for a vendor, what are some of the things that you found have become a lot more easier, the biggest milestones in the Kubernetes story?
Yeah. So in the very early days, everything was around Kubernetes, making Kubernetes easily available, meaning like provisioning Kubernetes, getting RBAC right, access right. And it was very important to be on the latest kind of Kubernetes version. So being behind like 2-3 versions was like painful, because there was always, particularly within our customers, we also saw like there was always development teams quite professional, advanced, requiring always the newest coming out of Kubernetes. And so that has obviously changed as Kubernetes has matured over the last couple of years. Today, that's still a big change going on. I mean, like there's plenty of other vendors that have written operators to run, maintain, and Kubernetes clusters to allow to have a fleet in a single pane of glass around that. But there's still a new project since like 2-3 years around, which we're also backing, which is called Cluster API. And that's still in the development phase, to be transparent. Ultimately, the goal of Cluster API is to make the management of a fleet of Kubernetes cluster independent of the underlying infrastructure much easier to everyone out there. So it becomes more and more a commodity, but still there's also work to be done. And we're also investing heavily into that, which us as a vendor allows to offer whatever we do on top on any type of infrastructure, being at bare metal, OpenStack, VMware, vSphere, being at one of the hyperscalers, etc. So adding these kind of that's one of the goals still. Other than that, I'd say Kubernetes is already very, very powerful as a tool, still somehow complex to learn and to understand. The next bigger thing, and that's also where we have dedicated teams towards, is like building really kind of what we call a cloud native developer platform on top. Because Kelsey Hightower always shared like Kubernetes is a platform to build platforms. And once you understand that, it's just a cornerstone to get started on the journey. And that's also what we see as a big misunderstanding in the marketplace, especially from the hyperscalers. They create a lot of noise. It's like, you just go on my platform, you start whatever a native Kubernetes cluster, being it EKS, AKS, GKE, and so on. And that's it. And you have Kubernetes. Theoretically, that's true, but it's just the beginning of something to build a platform around. And that's where we see many companies totally underestimate the effort of building these type of platforms on top.
That's interesting, because what I hear you saying is that it's not all about Kubernetes. It's about what you need to do as a business. And that should be the focus, not Kubernetes. And and I think that's something that you at GiantSwarm are trying to do, which is put the focus not as much on Kubernetes. And I see even the language on your website has kind of that, it reflects that you want to be a cloud native platform for developers. Is this true? Could you maybe comment a bit more on this? Do you feel like, or rather, what are the differences, or what would it be like for you to not focus on Kubernetes and instead focus on what you need to get done Could you comment on that thought a bit?
Yeah, we love to think from the developer's perspective. And as a developer, you would love to describe in a declarative way what you need as an environment. Have a Git repo where you simply describe, okay, I want to run my containers, well, most likely in a Kubernetes cluster. Then I need whatever, a database, a monitoring solution. I have to take care of security, and please simply give me that on a command. And take care, it's always up to date and it's running, so I don't need to worry and can really focus. And I think we are on that journey, not only Giant Swarm, but the market is on that journey towards so much more up the stack from Kubernetes, which is good to manage the underlying infrastructure, but really make it easy for developers to take benefit out of these cool technologies. And then if you look into the cloud native ecosystem, you will figure out in this nice landscape overview hundreds of different tools and projects, and that's where a lot of work obviously goes into understanding what is adding value for what, etc. And we like to standardize, so we have dedicated teams for whatever your open source observability stack, your open source security stack. And it's not around the tooling in general, but about really building capabilities within the organization and enabling it and living it, enabling the developer to live it. You can have a nice security tool. There's plenty of companies around the multi-billion-dollar valuations, and CISO spends tons of money on it, has a nice dashboard, and sees, okay, everything is red, and so now you need to make the developer really use it the right way, and that's where many organizations are really struggling with, and that's also where we try to help. And yeah, then from our own principles and philosophy is like, we love open source, so we support open source projects, we contribute to open source projects, because we think that the world can be an open source platform in general. So proprietary solutions might have an advantage short term because they have more money, more resources from VCs to invest into. But the community we see is typically picking up, and so once there is good open source and we agree on some good solutions, then it's about integrating them, automating it, and that's basically what we do.
Really cool. So I want to kind of define the key term of our conversation, which is what you specialize in, and that's managed Kubernetes. And if you can define for us, what is a managed Kubernetes platform? Which people hear a lot, but maybe you have a unique take on it. If you can define that for us, and even comment a bit on what should someone expect from a managed Kubernetes platform, and importantly, what should they not expect from it? Is there something that's beyond the frame of the managed Kubernetes platform itself?
Thanks. That's a good question, because managed is a term that is not really defined or used very differently. So there's many organizations call it managed Kubernetes. But for us, it's our definition is that you as an organization, you don't have the responsibility, you don't carry the pager. That's what we do at Giant Swarm. So we do kind of the preventive fixes, we do the upgrades. Obviously, we help, and if you have a certain window where you can upgrade and the teams and so on. What would you expect from I'd say not managed Kubernetes platform in the first place, from a Kubernetes platform. So a Kubernetes platform, if you just focus on that layer, obviously it should provide you the same experience on any type of infrastructure, having a single pane of glass. Then there are some differences from an architecture, and we're focusing very much on enterprises with higher security and availability requirements. So we see several players that have typically one management cluster within a public cloud region. Sometimes it's a shared one, and then it allows you to create workload clusters all over the places. But there are some dependencies and obviously some security things. Well, we do that differently from an architecture point of view. So that depends a little bit on your requirements. So we install management clusters in each and every cloud region data center for the customers. There's never a shared component. So if that's a requirement from security and governance perspective, then that's where we typically shine, for example. And then, yeah, as a managers, there's typically product vendors. There's several out there. I think many know the names, being it Rancher and Rathway and Spectra, et cetera, et cetera. They also sometimes call it managed, but it's simply a product which is supported. And we call it more the traditional way of doing things and selling software, which can become kind of painful if there's something not going the right direction, you run into a problem, yeah, then you can create a support ticket, then you wait typically on getting an answer. Maybe you get more questions than answers, and then and you're losing time basically. This is losing time. Well, we take a very different approach. We believe strongly in DevOps. So whatever we build, we should run. And we build this Kubernetes or Cloud Native Developer platform. So we run it for our customers. Hence, if something goes wrong, we are there in a minute. And that not some support people are there. The engineers who have built it are there to fix things. And so that's how we create more, from our perspective, definitely far more value towards our customers, because they can sleep and rest. One of our customers said it nicely, we break it and have coffee while John Swarm is fixing it underneath. So that's basically how we think about managed.
Wow. It reminds me of that famous quote from the Spider-Man movie: with great with great power comes great responsibility. And it seems like, your approach is to take on more responsibility and kind of shoulder all of that load of Kubernetes, not just building a product that, well, you hear a lot about this shared responsibility when it comes to the hyperscalers. They're responsible for part of it, you're responsible for part of it. You also hear these days the term self-service being used a lot, where, that's more from the developer side, but then, but it seems like you're totally contrary to this, especially the shared responsibility idea. You're I think, consciously taking on more responsibility yourself. And I think that's really bold and that's really unique, because I haven't heard it too frequently. But how is your approach? It's kind of like saying, we have a Kubernetes consultant who, has a team of people who implement stuff that we want, kind of the managed consulting kind of a business. How is this different from that?
Yeah, we're not only doing the consulting, we do the real work, I'd say. So we do like the installation in the data center for our customers. We're acting more or less as an internal platform engineering team. That's how our customers also see us. We are either the platform engineering team or the extension of an existing platform engineering team, taking a lot of their workloads away. We do that in a very transparent fashion. So that's also the difference, I'd say, to the very typically managed solution providers, which are more kind of black boxes, very often for the customers, while we are acting very, very transparently towards the customers. Hence, even going on, if we screw something up, we share the story because we want to learn together, and give our customers, as you said, the power. It feels like a do-it-yourself type of platform, but without having all the do-it-yourself type of work. So that's what we try to create for our customers. And as you said, like we take on the responsibility. So we carry the pages. Obviously, also our people don't want to get called out at night or on the weekends and so on. So that's how we work towards getting better each and every day.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So it seems like, you have a combination of product and services that you really bring together. And with services, like in the space, typically in the cloud native space, you typically hear negative comments about services, talking about how services doesn't scale. And that's why we focus on product. What's your view on services, and how do you find ways to scale your services so that, your service levels don't drop as your number of customers greatly increase? Could you share some of your thoughts on that, especially the services part of this?
Yeah, you're right. So the magic which we bring together is like in integrating and standardizing and automating things. That's the only way to scale. Other than that, we would be a single type of platform engineering team for one bigger organizations, but we do it for multiple organizations and leveraging the economies of scale here, which we have. From a business model perspective, we are pretty similar to the hyperscalers, if we think about, because yes, we scale by, we always have a dedicated account engineer for each and every one of our customers. And we have in each and every team solution architects. And the role of the account engineer is basically seeing what's going on with the customer, really proactively pushing in towards the right direction, getting more mature with their platform. Even though we bring a lot of technology and we operate it, we still consider it as their platform, because there's also always things the customer builds on top, next to it, etc., for their specific requirements and use cases. We can't do everything, but we do whatever, the 80-90% of a platform, and that's how we scale. And then obviously the more customers we have, the more account engineers we add. We have a good ratio, and that's also how we look at the business. Maybe you've also noticed that we have, in comparison to many other players in the ecosystem, we haven't raised money only for the inception of the company. We have been profitable since 2016, going forward and growing that company. That's also one of the reasons we want to become long-term partners for our customers. And many might be afraid of, okay, tomorrow you're going to sell to XYZ, and then I'm in the same situation again. I'm not saying the other word, but yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah.
Amazing. I love it when I hear a company that's bootstrapped and grown and really profitable. So amazing. Yeah, I love that. I was wondering if you could share an example, maybe a kind of a mini case study of sorts, of what you've seen where, one of your customers that have come from one of the hyperscalers, some of the challenges that they faced working with an EKS or a GKE or whichever, and kind of voice that out, because, a lot of time we don't hear that side of the story. And, I'm sure you've heard a lot of those examples. If you could tell us some of the challenges that you heard some of your customers face coming from those platforms, I'd be really curious to hear that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's too much about the technology, but it's about building a platform, whatever you provision your Kubernetes yourself. We see what type of customers we are seeing. I mean, like we divide customers typically in greenfield customers, which we call room one, and the more brownfield that have already built a platform, or sometimes we're talking to organizations that are building the third or even fourth version of that platform. Yeah, that have started super early on, like back in 2015, 2016, with ECS to be on AWS, and then added carbs. Now thinking about migrating towards EKS and so on. So that's what we see, and then there's definitely several organizations that failed, or where the platform team failed, because they underestimated that journey. Was easy to get into it, adding a few tools, it's all cool and sexy, and then maintaining it, and then having typically platform teams are too thin. Sometimes they're just like 2, 3, 4 people. And they can't deal with all the challenges and jobs to be done, building the platform, maintaining the platform, looking into the ecosystem, choosing it, onboarding development teams, fixing issues, doing 24/7. And that's when sometimes people get burned, took wrong decisions, building their own integration pipelines. Even Terraform can become a monolith and become painful, so that they can't scale further. If there are 20, 30 clusters, maybe that's okay. Now they need to add another cloud or another infrastructure next to it, and then they are simply breaking. And that's what we have seen. And that's how we also win customers again and again. That's unfortunately bad stories and journeys we see. And then there's also organizations, obviously, that they want to go into it. They're not the early movers, so they just get started right now. They want to speed up, put critical workloads on it, and then they really think about, okay, how do we do that?
Wow. So we've kind of talked a bit about the background and really connected it to Giant Swarm and its uniqueness. I want to just get to talking about Giant Swarm a bit, and just ask you about give us kind of the elevator pitch for Giant Swarm, and also tell us about how it works under the hood. How does the infrastructure look under the hood? Where do these workloads actually run? Is it on the cloud vendors, on those platforms, and Giant Swarm manages those that infrastructure on those cloud platforms, or is it something else?
Yeah, so kind of the elevator pitch is that obviously if you want to empower developers and put critical workloads towards cloud native infrastructure, there's like a few choices you can take. You can buy a product like whatever traditional Red Hat OpenShift product, and then you have to add a lot around it, or you go on the do-it-yourself journey. And we see more and more organizations going on the do-it-yourself journey, and as described, that's typically you need to hire people, you need to build up internal skills to go down that route. You need to understand all these open source tools, you need to integrate it, standardize and automate things, etc. And then you still need to get the development teams really using it, which also is a big challenge in many organizations, so that they are not breaking out and doing it themselves. And that most likely will take a couple of years, huge investment. And that's where we shine in, where we can provide basically all the benefits from day one very, very fast. So our big promise is whatever we do for the Fortune 5 customers we work with for plenty of years, you have within weeks there, we do the onboarding, we help you on that journey, and that speeds up. Has an incredible ROI towards the organization, and yeah, typically better quality because learnings over the last 9 years are a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah. And where it runs, as explains, whatever we do, we always run within the data center and cloud account of our customers. So there's nothing shared, nothing within Giant Swarm environments, etc. So we really get access, and I think that was also one of the questions. To provide a managed solution, obviously we need to have access towards the infrastructure of our customers. And in the early years, that was not that easy, to be transparent. Obviously, it's a huge trust relationship that needs to be in place. By now, that has changed. I think more and more companies have accepted that they not only operate in their own data center, but also move to the cloud. They're using more SaaS solutions today, and getting a VPN connection got much easier over the years.
Okay, really interesting. Yeah, so you're saying you can run it on a data center or in the customer's cloud account itself. Especially in this time, right, with the economy kind of doing crazy things and people thinking about cost optimization, FinOps, and all of that. This comes to my mind about, what about with this choice available, your data center is an option if you choose Giant Swarm, or your cloud platform is an option. What are some of the things you've been seeing recently, or you've been recommending to your customers when it comes to cost savings, especially over the past year or so?
Well, whatever makes sense towards the customer and the use case. I think there's you always have to look at it. If there's a data center around and there's good reasons to run workloads in there, we're definitely in favor of that. When it comes to public cloud, and you're right, since I'd say end of last year, there's lots of initiatives going towards cost optimization, reducing cloud spend. And obviously, we're working with the big 3 hyperscalers. We have good conversations with them, and they also see that, obviously, and they also try to help their customers to satisfy them, that they are staying. But yeah, theoretically, there's also some discussions going on with customers that have kind of a hybrid setup. So they have the same solution with Giant Swarm independently if they run on a bigger hyperscaler or in the data center, because it's an open source stack. And then it depends, obviously, based on the use case, what else are they using specifically as a service from the hyperscalers. The more they get into it, being it obviously in databases or whatever type of toolings like serverless, Lambda, and so on, then it's much harder, obviously, to remigrate towards their data center. Can it be more? Can it be cheaper? Yes, many think so. Because hyperscalers, depending on how you're using it, can become very, very expensive, or more expensive than what they would have expected. But let's see. And obviously, we're also hoping that the economy is picking up again, and that this cost reason is less important, and it will stay important. That's for sure. But what we think in general, and that's more the customers also we're looking for, is the ones that want to innovate, that see a lot of additional value creation through. And I think that's what also cloud native is about. It's about speeding up innovation, development of code, and so on. I always tell customers that's far more important than if you can create additional value and think you can build up whatever new business and creating better customer experiences, then you should make more money, and that's more important.
Yeah. I want to also ask about, since Giant Swarm manages oftentimes hybrid infrastructures across different platforms and locations. So, the challenges that typically come up with this model is that, one, just having consistency across them and visibility, being able to have a single pane of glass across these multiple infrastructures types. And then the other one, apart from this, is also, migrating workloads across them, and that kind of portability and flexibility. Which is actually the original promise of hybrid, which is that you don't need to be locked into any one platform. Do you have any thoughts to share on this and Giant Swarm's approach to these challenges related to hybrid cloud?
Yeah, that's where we help our customers more from a consulting perspective, because it's not about the infrastructure and the platform, the tooling. I said, like, there's nice abstraction which we get with Kubernetes, offering the same experience independent of the underlying infrastructure, but it's more about the architecture, and GitOps plays a bigger role here from our perspective, so that you really architecture and build good GitOps process so that you can deploy the same towards another infrastructure tomorrow.
All right.
And moving back and forth, obviously, yes, then also to do, as said, like, what else are you using, especially from a hyperscaler, and how much you lock yourself into one of them.
All right. And one of the key benefits that I saw from going through your Giant Swarm, your website, is you're talking about faster time to value, where it takes time to set up and see value from a DIY approach. It's a little sooner if you go with the hyperscaler, but then you're saying Giant Swarm gives you value from almost day one. If you can explain that argument for us and connect the dots and explain how does this work and what are some of the drawbacks with those approaches that you see Giant Swarm really solving?
Yeah. So yeah, when you as a customer decide to partner up with Giant Swarm, basically what we do is, like, obviously, typically we have kind of a workshop where we try to understand your real requirements and your plans going ahead as a customer, and then we figure out what's the right infrastructure, what's the right architecture, how the stack should look like, and then we set it up quite fast, because it's highly automated. Our people are very experienced, and with that you also have a platform engineering team in place immediately, which also, there's always a few people obviously on the customer side which we work very closely with, which we enable and empower and speed up as well, where we share the knowledge on a daily basis. So we always have shared Slack channels where they can ask everything and get an answer within minutes from one of our experts, being it on a security topic, being it how do I do my observability, how do I connect things, etc. And if the customer wants, we also help enable and bring on the first development teams so that the internal platform engineering team is capable to repeatedly do that again and again. And that speeds up the journey dramatically. It's not only that we bring in the tech, but also the processes and the people. And and I said, like, you get a solution that's proven at scale with very big organizations, with the most critical use cases. If you think about having Adidas as a customer, where their $5-6 billion online shop is running on that platform, if something goes wrong, they immediately would lose millions. And we have several of these customers being at big factories standing still. That's where customers lose a lot of money, and that's where you want to have the experts at your side.
Yeah, that's cool. Really interesting that you talk about this, the internal platform team, and then you guys also acting like an external platform team, which is kind of an extension of your team. I can totally see that, startups would be very open to this idea of, we just want to have a few developers and not worry about infrastructure. You guys take care of it. You be our platform team. But typically, the larger the organization is, the more they want to keep in-house, the more they probably want to build their team. They have a lot of talent, of course, available, and a lot of budget. And so they typically end up building big teams. And so probably I don't know if it is, but it may be a harder sell the bigger the organization is, to say that, we can be an extension of your platform team. Any thoughts on that, about how this whole concept of an external platform team is for a startup versus an enterprise? How they see it differently, and some of the changes you've seen recently, the trends?
Yeah, generally, you're right, I'd say. But I think more about the DNA of a company, and that not necessarily depends on the size of the company. And there's companies that have a very, very strong do-it-yourself mindset, and they will always do whatever in-house. We see that, and then there's others that are much more open, that really think about their core competencies in a way, and don't not necessarily see. I mean, it's the same. There's a big automotive company that want to build their own AWS, basically. Okay, yeah, you can do that. Possibly. I don't think so, but yeah, they will try. So that's a very strong do-it-yourself DNA, because they don't think that the 20-30% profit margin that AWS has is justified, and they have the scale to do it themselves. Okay, you can do that, probably. And then there's other organizations. They don't think that way. They really think about what's our core competency, and manufacture. Okay, manufacturing our product, shipping the product, selling it, etc. That's our core competence. IT, it's not necessary. Yeah, writing software, yes. Managing infrastructure, possibly no. And that's why the hyperscalers are growing a lot, because people don't see, or more organizations don't consider that as a core competency anymore. Plugging in servers and building networks, etc., etc. And I think the same will be true with platforms. What else is right? I mean, we followed more a little bit kind of the Tesla strategy. So focusing on the very early days, upmarket, Fortune 500, Global 2000 companies, because they were also capable. They have large critical use cases. They are capable of investing more, which helped us on our bootstrapping path, making enough money from these customers. But right now we're breaking it further down, allowing organizations at a much lower entry level partnering up with Giant Swarm. And then it's more kind of the choice. I'd say, do you hire 2 people in-house, or do you take a Giant Swarm and you get a complete platform which you can't build up with 20 people, for example?
Wow, really nice, really neat. Yeah, it's a good way to put it. So how does pricing work, considering you've got a product and you've got services? How does pricing work for Giant Swarm? Because it is a unique model.
Yeah, we have a pure subscription model based on, I think still unfortunately based on cores and RUMs within the workload clusters. It's a common denominator. It's widely known. We would rather, or I personally would rather love to have a model based on developers, because I think the ultimate goal is to empower the developer. But yeah, that's a little bit tricky, because most organizations and companies and customers are using pipelines to deploy, so we not necessarily see the developers behind it. So that's why it's still the case. And everything is included. So we don't do any services at the side. The only exception would be if we once go on a co-innovation path where we build something together with the customers, but that's more an exception. We do a lot of co-innovation, but it's mostly a pure subscription model where customers are committed to partner up with Giant Swarm in the first time for a year or 3 years, these kind of models. It's more before I hire kind of whatever a number of people in-house, I go and partner up with Giant Swarm.
Mm-hmm. And what are the initial few days like for the onboarding of your customers? How long does it take to see early results? What are those results? When do you actually reach peak performance or normal performance? How long does that take?
Typically, that depends more on the customer. We have a very standardized we call it a Giant Swarm process, where we have kind of a first meeting. Then if we agree going forward and we do kind of a workshop, then it's optional to do a POC, where you could always just where we define also a clear set of success criteria, which we can check off, or you immediately want to go and start. So that's when we get access towards the infrastructure, and that can already take a while within bigger enterprises, especially if it's on-prem. So that's not on us, it's more on the customer side. If we are lucky, we get a cloud account with admin rights within a couple of days, but sometimes it can take weeks. And getting into on-premise data center can possibly even take longer. Sometimes customers are buying hardware to set something new up. So that's not depending on us. But once we have access, we install everything within 24 hours. And then we do an onboarding session with the platform engineering team in the first place. And then we have weekly syncs. And our goal is always to have something in production latest within 3 months. Something critical, not something whatever type of service. And theoretically, that's an easy one, right? I mean, like you create a Kubernetes cluster, you create an environment with some monitoring, logging, etc., and then you simply launch a cluster, a service. So that's not a big deal. But having something very robust and critical running in there, it's like a different story.
And what difference? Sorry, continue.
There's one story and we do that since a long time. So I think we started working together 2016, 17, and back at that time we built kind of our first operator for AWS, because they planned a bigger rollout on AWS, and I think we started early in Q2 in that year, and the goal was to roll out globally, even to China before the Christmas season and Black Friday was sitting and Singles Day was sitting in, and we got it done back then.
And what do your clients say? What are the early results or the remarks that you hear once this transition happens? You say, let's say you get access and then you set up things in, let's say, 24 hours or the first week. What are some of the first impressions of your customers?
They are quite amazed, especially if as an example, we have one customer that this year migrated from another Kubernetes vendor and hoster. So they also had a managed service in place where they had very long response times, never got really good answers, etc. Then they migrated now to us, and they are amazed by the service, by the quickness of the response, being it through Slack, the weekly meetings, the service level. And what's important for the longer customers is the platform has become that robust over the years that they definitely see far less downtimes. So we had one very large customer that had 16 downtimes, reducing that to 1. Yeah, something can go wrong at scale. We're talking at real scale. There might be problems. And then meantime to recovery, we had one of the biggest websites from the US was migrating towards us, and they had an internal platform engineering team. I said, like, their internal challenges because they had too much on the plate in general. And meantime to recovery was something very important to them. And they said on average they had like 3-4 hours themselves. And with Giant Swarm, they never saw anything that took more than 10-15 minutes. And if you think about that, this is like they're selling whatever more than 1 million via their website, and that's their revenue. Then it's like basically a lot of money they are leaving on the table, and that's what they valued. Another thing, what they value is obviously they say very often that they would have spent to get that knowledge and get that experience, or would have spent a lot of money towards consultancies, or hiring new people.
Oh, really nice. We're at the end of our conversation. It was really interesting chatting with you about Giant Swarm and just the unique product and service combination that you bring to the market. As we wind down, I wanted to ask about finally, where do you see the space headed? Managed Kubernetes, cloud native. Where do you see this headed? What most excites you when you think about the next 1 to 2 years for this space, or even just for Giant Swarm, and what plans Giant Swarm itself has for the next 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, I said like on the layer, it's definitely the Kubernetes layer is getting even more mature with cluster API. So over the next 2 years, I expect that this will become a standard and in place, which makes it easier to run Kubernetes clusters also for ourselves and any type of infrastructure, which is a good one. Then there's a strong trend definitely towards the developer having a very declarative approach towards the developer, seeing them as an end user, describing what they want to have the environment within the Git repo, and really abstracting that and creating it and empowering it. And I definitely see more organizations joining and seeing the benefits, wanting to take profit out of it, empowering their developers. And ourselves, we definitely see not only winning many more large global organizations as customers, which can run hundreds of clusters. Plus, we see there more and more cases going towards the edge, obviously. So manufacturers are joining it, and Kubernetes become more ubiquitous, using it not only in data centers, but in whatever, trains, ships, and any type of remote locations, and whatever, telecom towers, etc., you name it. So that's definitely something we see and expect. And then also empowering small organizations. You said startups. Why not? So that's what we also see. And there can be also large organizations. So we also have larger organizations, let's say they have a manufacturer with 10,000 employees, doing still a couple of billion maybe in revenues, having a smaller IT department, but still want to go into that and allowing them not investing millions into an internal platform engineering team to take benefit of these technologies. That's definitely something we have on our agenda as well.
Yeah, definitely sounds exciting.
It's still way ahead.
yeah. But really cool what you guys are doing at Giant Swarm. I find it really fascinating. With that, we come to the end of our conversation around Giant Swarm. But before you go, Henning, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions to get to know you a bit, the other side of you. What would be your alternate career if not for your job in tech?
Yeah, that's a good one. So unfortunately, I was not good enough, but I would have loved to become sports professional when I was younger. There was, I loved to play tennis, and unfortunately got a better injury when I was younger. Did some other sports, but I always loved sports a lot. And that's where I have a lot of passion for as well. I don't think I will ever go down the politician route, but yeah. There's too many things going on. I would love to see changing, but
yeah. Do you still play tennis?
Yes, I do from time to time. Now with my oldest son.
Neat. What's one work tool you can't live without?
Ooh, so that's a good one. I guess there's many. In the first place, I would say I still need a computer or a laptop or something.
Okay.
But yeah, if it's around software, I thought about that a bit. I think we got very used to using Slack. Then also collaborating with Google Docs. It's like really helpful. And then yeah, if you think about more in the CM side of thing, that's always something I like and love to have on my side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Slack and Google Docs. Yeah, use Google Docs all the time. Your so as CEO, your role requires you to wear various hats. You need to think about finances, sales, marketing, product, engineering. You've got all of these different things that you're thinking about all the time. But which of these would you say most resonates with you as as a person, considering who you are, your career? Which one excites you the most, or which resonates with you the most? You're that kind, yeah. Which are these?
Yeah, I think in the first place, it's still being kind of a company builder and enabling our people and moving forwards. We have kind of clear thinking about that. People, product, profits, it's always a way we think. Everything what we do, it's about people. We need to have the best people. They need to feel very good being a giant swarm and staying around it. That's what we think a lot about. And then obviously the other things are following. And next to that would be more kind of marketeer, bringing people together, explaining. Maybe that's also a little bit your role, right? Explaining things that people understand it the right way, and challenging them also think differently.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, nice. Complete this sentence for us. At a party or a conference, I'm usually the guy who
connects people.
All right. Hey, so you got a lot of contacts. The last question for you, Henning, is what's something that you found out about being CEO that you didn't know before you became one, but then this was probably going way back because it's been a while now since you've been CEO. I don't know if there was something initially that kind of surprised you about the role that you didn't know before that you remember you could tell us.
Yeah, I think that what most surprised me is that I totally underestimated that people were really working for us as founders. So that has become clear to me after we sold our last venture to a Fortune 500 organization. And then, yeah, my friends and colleagues share now it's different because the feeling is we don't work for you, but for Fortune 500, and we were very dedicated to you as a person. And that's what I totally underestimated. Yeah.
Wow, that is sublime. What a note to end on. That was a delightful conversation, Henning. Thanks for joining us. And I really loved your take on managed Kubernetes. Very unique, the product you're building, the company you're building. And kudos to you for doing it all bootstrapped. It's really amazing story that Giant Swarm has. I'm so glad I got to know the story behind the Giant Swarm itself today. All the best for what you're building, and we hope you'll join us again soon.
Yeah, Twain, thanks a lot for having me today. It was a real pleasure meeting you and having that conversation. I really enjoyed it as well, and looking forward to stay in touch.
All right. And thanks to all of our listeners and viewers. We want to thank you again for being part of this conversation. We hope you enjoyed this as much as we did. And if you like this, then definitely join us again because we bring you new conversations like this on a weekly basis. So till the next time, see you. Bye-bye.